In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk to Tatjana from Miro. It's a very exciting company you all probably work with. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to our new episode of Get Hired. We have our very special guest today, Tatjana from Miro. Hey, Tatjana, nice to have you on the call.
Hi, Ben. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Thanks for taking the time. So, can you tell us in like 5 sentences who you are?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Tatjana Obenaus, and I am living in Amsterdam, and I'm heading up our employer branding and recruitment marketing functions here at Miro. So my job is essentially to, let the world know that Miro is a great place to work. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. And I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about this today. Can you tell us a bit more about Miro? So I think many people have already worked with Miro for, like cooperative work, idea gathering. It's a very cool tool. I like it a lot. And therefore, I'm very, very glad we can speak today. But can you give us a bit more background? So what you guys actually do?
Yeah, so I think you were quite right in explaining that we are a software as a service company. Ultimately, we are a virtual workplace for innovation. So we enable teams to, lead engaging workshops, lead meetings, design products, new ideas. So you can do so much with Miro. Essentially, I realized the other day that I pretty much use maybe 5% of its functionality because there's so much that you can do with it. But yeah, so we are co-headquartered in San Francisco and Amsterdam, and we have more than 60 million users worldwide, 99% of Fortune 100. So all of the big players there, they're using our services. And currently we have around 1,800 employees. So 1,800 employees and in 12 hubs around the world. So we are quite international when it comes to our workforce.
It's actually pretty cool that Miro has become kind of a household name, right? So when for example, we used Miro most recently for a conference where we had a workshop, and we asked people who joined the workshop to prepare like a client or a customer or a candidate journey in the end to scribble that in Miro, and it worked actually very well. So that was pretty cool. So that people, I think many of them have not or had not used Miro before, but they could easily adopt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think we put a lot of pressure now on really making sure that, first of all, introducing our tool to new users, but then also making it really user-friendly. So we really lean heavily into, insight generation and really listening to our customers. What can we do better? And so forth. And then obviously once you are a client with us, we have a very heavy educational program of really making sure that our customers are set up for success, essentially. So that's a core work stream for our teams, I would say. But great to hear that you had such an experience.
Well, it was really cool, and I'm wondering, what is the founder's story of Miro? So, how long are you around?
Yeah, that's a great story. So essentially, our founder and CEO, Andrej Kusit, he was back then in 2011. He was an owner of a design agency. And back then he really wanted to find a way of how to, share all of his ideas with, his clients, but there was not such a thing that he could use, in order to show all the great things that his team has developed. So back then he, first came up with this, I think one of the first whiteboard tools. Back then it was called real-time board. Maybe that still rings a bell for some. But yeah, and then obviously we had this massive growth story. Corona happened, obviously, which was a huge enabler for Miro, huge demand. So from 2019 to 2021, we grew massively, really, from 200 employees to 1,800 people in just over 2 years. So that's where the growth story happened. But yeah, so we started quite small and now we are quite an established company, I would say, in that
Well,
space.
this story almost sounds a bit too perfect.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's somebody who had nothing to do with IT, never thought about founding a SaaS company. Okay, well, I found a SaaS company with almost 2,000 employees.
Yeah, but
Well,
he's a like our founder still. Like he's such a strong entrepreneur still. Like, he wants to be involved and wants to have a say, and like he's so passionate about his product, and we all feel that. And yeah, we all love working with him. But yeah, it's a really beautiful success story, I would say.
well, you mentioned COVID, which has been a time of tremendous change, and well, you said like an enabler, well, probably also like a massive accelerator, right? So like from within a few weeks, companies had to completely change the way how people cooperated. Well, I'm to be honest, I'm kind of a office guy, so I still well am like 5 days a week in the office, and therefore for me it was always weird to work from home, but also having during COVID the opportunity to stay in touch with coworkers, to work on well gathering ideas was incredibly important back then, and nowadays that we work from three different offices, it's even more important that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Yeah. And even we see it as well. Obviously, we have especially at Miro, we now have a hybrid work model, which means that, our teams can, like, we can contribute our time working from home. And then, so we pretty much always have distributed teams, like, that we need to work together. We love the in-person collaboration in our offices because that's one of our values, collaboration, obviously, working for a company
Makes
like
sense.
mean, you would not find one person at Miro that doesn't love collaboration. So we love coming together, but still, obviously, we are using so heavily our tools like Miro when really working across distributed teams. Like, we have all of these great features now that you can record talk tracks. Not sure if you have heard of it, but you can essentially record your own videos on the platform and then send it async to your teams in the US, for example, so they don't have to be on the board when you present it. So stuff like that. Yeah. So we love the mix still of coming together, but then also working.
Well, COVID for obvious reasons was for most people a very significant moment in their life. So how were things at Miro back then? So was it like, okay, guys, there's something going on that will tremendously change how many people will use our product in 2 weeks' time, because in a few weeks' time, people will realize, okay, the operating model for how to cooperate, how to work together has completely changed, and we have no idea how long this will last. It could last years, which in the end it did, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, for the teams in Miro, obviously it was a super, super hectic, but also amazing, like fascinating time, going through that hyper growth and still having the, bit of anxiety and not knowing what will happen. Obviously, you had the virus like being on top of everything, right? Also from a personal level, like what would happen to the world and so forth. But then we are part of this rocket ship that is like growing so much. And also back then the teams had to work remotely, like fully, and that also those teams had to also really navigate and get used to the new ways of working, even though they had used the tool before, but still it was a new way of working for them, not seeing each other in person and so forth. So, navigating all of these changes and the environment, and obviously then scaling operations, like growing the team and making sure they're onboarded in the right way, making sure operations are happening in the right way. I mean, it was a crazy time back then, but I think we did something right. So yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned you guys are in Amsterdam and in San Francisco. So how does cooperation between or collaboration between those two places work?
Yeah, so we have so I just said like we have 12 hubs around the world, and like Amsterdam being the biggest one here in EMEA. So we have pretty much all our tech functions here in Amsterdam. We also work a lot with Berlin, where we have another office for tech folks. And then with Austin and San Francisco, we have more of the operations being based there. Also, our leadership is quite distributed. So we have we really like created some sort of like company rituals like that happen on a cadence. For example, we have really strong all hands where really pretty much every single employee attends. Sometimes you have all hands like, oh, and then maybe 10% of the workforce show up, but this is really like a time for people to really connect all across the globe. And then obviously, yeah, we work a lot with distributed teams as well across the organization. So we have like these, weekly team meetings where everyone can come together, and then these opportunities for async work where we really, because we also are quite aware of the time differences, that sometimes it's not so easy, to really work together, come all together at the same place, and at the same time really look at our employees' well-being. So we are always at the forefront to really, establish our products and see like what can we do in order to make it easier for distributed teams. So yeah, so that's what we do. And then obviously we sometimes travel as well to meet them. So we have usually we have like an annual get together where everyone can see each other in person, and then obviously the functions have some of this ritual. So it's again, there's a strong focus on really connecting with peers.
How do you maintain one single Miro culture in 12 hubs in, well, places like San Francisco and Amsterdam that are kind of like far away, but still like one Miro culture?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question. And so what really, I mean, maybe starting with the question of like, hey, what defines our culture, and what is our culture about? I think we have some very, very strong company values that have been co-created by our Mironeers. So it's not something that the leadership has developed. It was really something that was created from within. So, and these values, it's about,
maybe can I stop you there?
Yeah, of course.
How did you do that? So I think in theory it always sounds like amazing. So like magically people came together and had like great ideas. How did you do that in practice?
Yeah, I think what played into our cards back then is that we were back then when the values were developed, we were still quite a tight communication community of Mironeers. So imagine for a company with 200 people, it's probably easier than having creating values for a company of 16,000 or like something like that. So we were quite a tight community back then. And what you said, I mean, it was really coming together and workshopping. Hey, what is important to us? Not only from a workplace perspective, but also what do we want to apply for our product, for our partnerships, for pretty much all of the touch points in our environment, really. And that's how the core foundation really came to life. And then obviously it went through testing phases of really validating with the employee base back then, like, hey, is this something we stand for? Obviously our CEO, he was very, I mean, it was a very huge passionate project for him. So he was heavily involved there as well. But then it's also really about constantly double checking, like, hey, whether your values are still accurate and whether they're still validated. So that is quite like really important, I would say. But for us, these cultural values are really all about collaboration. Again, a big surprise, we all collaborate with each other. Then it's about impact. So really focusing our efforts and making sure that we are really leaning into, projects that have an impact. Then it's empathy. So we practice empathy, whatever we do. Like we really, look for customer insights, but also what we do within our community here at Miro. And the last one is about iteration. So I'm not sure, like here at Miro, like the syncronym, like MVP. I'm sure you've heard it before. My available product. That's one of the. Before I joined, I didn't really use it, but when I joined, like, okay, MVP here. So we really, iterate on our products constantly, and we gather feedback, and we see like, hey, is this still working? And then we update it. So for example, also with our career site, we We launched the V1 version a couple of months ago, and now we are already iterating. What can we do better? What do we roll out next? So it's really always a concern. And that really, and these values are so embedded in everything that we are doing. They become pretty much the identity of the employee, really. And that is also what we are looking in when looking for new hires and new candidates. What we really assess are a cultural fit. So are these people able to somehow really show these values? So we would not hire someone that would not be able to display these values. So that's really important for us. And then obviously what really makes our culture as well, it's that when you think back about the growth we went through, having been a hyper growth company, that was like a crazy time, but now also we are maturing as a company, right? So now it's that time for us to really see and okay, what are the processes we need to put in place? How can we better listen to our employees and so forth? So we are really, our HR teams are, I think, the most busy teams ever in this company, because they work on so many different aspects to really make sure our company is maturing. And that is also, it's a very dynamic environment to be in. And then what also makes our culture it's quite important for our culture is the employee development, that we are really looking into, making sure that our employees are continuously learning and developing, and that's super important for us from a cultural point of view.
You mentioned the developing values together. I think it's a very cool thing to do this. It also requires enablement, right? So empower people to speak up and not wait for the most senior person in the room to basically take the lead. And one person defines the direction and the other is just not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what we are doing right now, we are rolling out a new set of behaviors as well. So these are laddering up to our values, and they will be part of also our performance management to really see okay, if an employee has really shown some of the behaviors, and then obviously it will set them up for success, ultimately understanding, okay, what do I need to do in order to be successful in our company? And that will also help in the long run to really make sure that, because you are right, it has been quite a, maintaining a consistent culture across that hyper growth. That's a challenge for sure in any company, really, because you onboard so many people constantly from all of these companies, and then you grow so fast that it's really hard to establish that one culture. And I think we are there right now to really revalidate and see okay, what is the new reality really at Miro, which is quite a fascinating environment to be in right now and to observe from an HR perspective for sure.
What are things you guys envisage for the future? So what is something you guys work on a lot that defines you as an organization, your product, and also then as a result of this, what people gonna join Miro going forward?
Yeah, no, I think we have some couple of drivers for innovation for us. Definitely what I mentioned already, it's the customer-centric approach, that really listening to our users and listening to customer insights, trying to adapt and iterate on our product to make it really the best product you can find on the market. So we are really heavily behind that. And then for us, it's also really, the willingness to embrace risk-taking. So whilst we also focus a lot on, incremental growth and making sure that, okay, we are growing our user base, it's also really having a close look on where we can invest, and where we can have these groundbreaking innovations and still are positioned as an industry trailblazer. So to really find a balance between those. So these are quite important as well. Then we have a strong commitment to technology integration. So as you can see, we are now also implementing AI on our product. So that is a very interesting and fascinating topic for us, because it's so new and we're also finding out new ways of how we can integrate. And then what I said, it's about employee development, to really focus here, because we do believe we have amazing talent in our company. So how can we nurture them? How can we develop them? Because ultimately your employees are building your product, right? So that's very important. So I would say these are the 4 key pillars for us, really.
So for how long have you been with Miro yourself?
Yeah, well, I have been with Miro now for almost 1.5 years. 1.5 years, yeah. Feels longer sometimes. And like, yeah, yeah, quite, yeah.
What made you join Miro?
Yeah, so I before Miro, I worked for 7 years for one of the biggest tech companies here in Amsterdam. I worked for Booking.com, loved my time, amazing company. But after a while, you're looking for a next fresh opportunity, and I could see this in Miro because back then, growth was massive, and they really needed an expert and employer branding, and also really making sure that we can compete with all of these other tech players here in Amsterdam. As one reason, obviously we are international, but here's our tech hub, so we have more than 1,800 employees here in Amsterdam. So that was my biggest motivation, really. I love the culture, what I can see from the outside. The values of collaboration, have an impact, iteration, that really appealed to me a lot. So I love doing that, and I love building things. And whilst Booking became quite big, I could see here that you still had that startup dynamics and plays, and you were given trust, and like, hey, I let you build something, and that's where I get my energy from. So I think I found the right place for sure, in that. Yeah, that was my motivation.
This is pretty cool indeed. And well, being very client-centric kind of echoes also there at Booking.com, right? So also very client-centric organization. I must say I really like their service of, hey, you have something to, well, where you need to complain and it's dealt with very, very swiftly. That's pretty cool indeed. Mm. Can so you're currently based in Amsterdam, but you're originally not from the Netherlands, right?
Yeah, no, I'm a Berliner, born and raised. Yeah, so I'm a German, but yeah, I've been living here for 8 years already. So back then I came with my not yet husband, but we came together because he got a job offer here in Amsterdam, and I was like, yeah, why not? Let's move to the Netherlands. And we were not planning to stay for that long. And we were like, oh, let's do 1 or 2 years. And now we're here after 8 years. And but yeah, no, really, really enjoying it.
It is very cool indeed to have the experience of working for as a German person in Holland for an American Dutch company. What kind of well, culture you bring to the company, and also what kind of culture do you establish there?
Mm. In terms of like the nationality that I bring on board, or like the perspective?
Exactly. So like the different kind of well, you bring together so many cultures, not speaking of company culture, but like a diversity of thoughts, a diversity of backgrounds. I think it can enrich a company incredibly well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think D&I is hugely important, especially when you build products, because you want to build a product for everyone, really. You want to be inclusive. So it's so important to have a diverse mindsets of people on board. And yeah, we do see that here at Miro as well. Like if you come to the office, you won't hear one of the same language all over again. I mean, obviously it's English, so we have an English, especially also here in Amsterdam, we have an English language, but overall we have like many different nationalities here. Sometimes I don't see so many Dutch in the office because it's really international. But no, it's hugely important for any company, really. And I think, yeah, for me, I learned a lot as well. For me, coming from a German background, or maybe I have always worked for international companies. I've never worked in a German company. But I do love the international aspect. I do love all of these different perspectives. I think I would have a hard time reintegrate back into a fully German company. Not because it's bad, but I think I would just miss out on the internationality.
So what made you, or what drives your passion for HR, for employer branding?
Yeah, so I have a background in brand marketing. That's what I studied, and that's where I worked my first 5 years of my career in. So I would not call myself like an HRer or like, someone that had HR for a long time. And I then, like 7 years ago, I switched into employer branding because pretty much not knowing what it is, I think, back then. Joined Booking and was like, oh yeah, we are looking for a digital marketing specialist within employer branding. I was like, oh yeah, sounds interesting. Let's give it a try, because also back then the topic was also quite new still in Europe. So I started doing it, and I like quickly started to realize how diverse that function is. And from a professional perspective, I do enjoy it so much because I'm a generalist. I love doing multiple things and not going into too much detail, but really having an oversight of a lot. So, and that's exactly what you get in employer brand, because you need to know how to develop a website, and then you need to know about social media marketing, digital marketing, events. Like there's just so much that you own as an employer brand manager or leader. So every day for me looks different. I love that variety, the diversity of it. And then obviously the topic itself, it's like about communication, about people. I'm not selling shoes anymore. I'm now selling career opportunities or even futures for some of my, for some people in my audience. So I think the impact that you have ultimately is massive. And that's why I'm sticking to it. And then obviously, you get in HR and in employer branding, you just have to talk to so many stakeholders. You pretty much need to know the entire company in order to have a real impact, because it's not only about external audiences as well, because you also influence the work internally about like shaping the culture, what you said, also like increasing that feeling of pride and belonging amongst your workforce. So that's why it's a huge topic, which I just love.
It just said, well, it's about selling. I think it's a very interesting perspective, because I think in particular when you look at employer branding, talent acquisition in 2023, 2024, it is very much like the second sales division of the company. So you have sales for your product, however, you have also sales in terms of, well, the company itself, right? So and how to convince people to join Miro, how to convince people to join whatever company. It's about, okay, what kind of company do we represent, and do we find people who are, well, who are willing to spend a lot of lifetime at this company to share those values, to contribute.
Yeah, I agree. And I do believe like it needs to go hand in hand. I see so many companies also doing employer branding and so much in silos. Then you have the candidate experience and the journey, and that's it. And then they're on board, and it's like a completely different and scattered experience, especially from an employer's perspective, which is just like, not really effective in the long run. So yeah, I do believe it needs to work more closely together, even for our company. I think we can do more.
Well, it's I think it's super interesting to that you guys also then have this very strong presence here in Europe, while obviously most of these very successful, rapidly growing tech companies are mainly in the US. So does it also reflect the way how you work? So you work with lots of Europeans. You are you have many Europeans on your team, and you also hire many Europeans then.
Yeah, we do hire like Europeans as well. Especially here, we have a huge like customer success team as well. They are looking after the support for customers and so forth. So and pretty much like a lot of other functions as well, as I mentioned, our tech hubs are here. So think of engineering, design, product. We all have them here. And so yeah, here in Europe, we can definitely offer like career opportunities for all of these functions, really. Now when you say about the growth markets, really, I mean, US is definitely a huge market for us. But we, for example, also see a lot happening now in the Nordics as well, where we still have a lot of potential as well, and even Japan, like as another market, which is not outside of the US. So it's like we are truly like worldwide organization that is really looking to grow massively worldwide. So that's interesting.
What does it take for potential or new employees to be successful at Miro?
Yeah. So what I just mentioned, like the values are hugely important for us when we really look for new talent. So there's a really strong assessment of like how these candidates or like how new employees can, or like candidates can really lean into the values. We ask them to really show some concrete examples of how they lived them in the past, and if not, then maybe how they would go about that. So collaboration really is all about how we work together. We learn from each other, we give feedback, we really are one team, and that is highly important. And then also for impact and empathy, like showing these examples in the interview. And so when they become, when someone becomes part of our company, then it becomes really part of their identity, and we measure that as well in performance management. So that's really important. And then from a professional background, like what we really value skills and experience over degrees. I think that's also quite interesting to mention here, that we put a strong focus on really analyzing the skills. Obviously, in some of the roles in engineering, obviously like a master degree in computing or something is relevant for sure. But still, if someone is, a new joiner of like, or someone that can really show like, hey, I've done X, Y, and Z, we would definitely also consider someone here for sure.
Then, how do you sell Miro to new joiners? So beyond cultural and value. So I think it's super important to mention this, but also like on career perspectives. What is important to you guys?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it depends, obviously, what kind of talent we are talking to. But ultimately, it's like really, you can still part of being like this rocket ship, that has still a huge, massive like growth story ahead of age. And like we are building really the next big thing here. So that is always quite aspirational. We have amazing leaders to work with. For example, if you look in our product teams, like Varun, our like chief product officers, he's just like such an amazing person to learn from, learning and growth and development. Like, since we have that huge focus on learning and development, we also offer really strong learning and development opportunities internally. So also internal mobility, so we're making sure that people also can move across the different functions, which is always quite strong, aside from all the financial benefits and aspects of it. So I would say these are quite strong selling points, really. I think the hybrid culture that we offer is also quite interesting for me as a parent, for example. I love that hybrid model, and that flexible model, which is really fantastic to me. So it depends who you talk to, but I would say that our culture is a very strong selling point.
By the way, would you consider this an opportunity for you, or a possibility for you to move to San Francisco to work from there?
If I were single, maybe. If I were single, I would definitely. No, we have our house, and my kids go to school, so I think we're stuck here.
Okay.
But definitely, yeah. So mobility is definitely a topic for some of our staff. And supportive. Obviously, it's a case by case scenario, but.
Very cool. So for people, maybe you can give us a bit of an overview. So we talked about the different hubs you guys have with like Amsterdam and San Francisco as the main hubs. So the amount of people you hire in certain places, how can I picture that? Is it like 40% Amsterdam, 40% San Francisco, and 20% for the rest, or is it a bit different?
Yeah, it always depends like on the cycle of the company we're going through. So for right now, we're planning for next year. So for example, tech is quite flat at the moment. So especially here in Amsterdam, what we are looking for is really marketing talent. So, you know, think of like digital marketing, and then we have you know, all of these functions are really quite booming at the moment. So there's some of them are based out of Austin, and there's also some of here. So if someone is interested, really, I would highly recommend to just check out our career site for any opportunities. But it varies, you know, right now. So, but yeah.
What was your best moment at Miro so far?
Yeah, my best moment at Miro so far was so when I got to meet my team in person for the first time, because I joined Miro, we were like a distributed team. So I have three team members in Yerevan, Armenia. One of them was in Amsterdam with me, and then Berlin, and we had an offsite together here in Amsterdam where we all could come together. And that was my moment to realize, like, oh my God, that was amazing for me from a personal perspective. Yeah.
Cool. No, it's just super amazing how how you describe also basically the reality at Miro being a company that works hybrid, that supports companies that work in a hybrid working model. So it's actually pretty cool to learn about that indeed.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. It was great to be here.
Cool. No, thanks a lot, Tatiana. It was super cool to have all your insights. Thanks a lot for listening in. I'm also sure you learned a lot about the culture at Miro and how to maintain a great culture. Thanks a lot for listening in, and see you next time.